Meg Murray escapes from everyday life with the help of a tesseract, a being who can bend the fabric of space-time in order to travel throughout the cosmos. I, however, do not know any tesseracts, so I'm stuck with reading science fiction novels. Madeleine L'engle's A Wrinkle in Time was far ahead of its time. Even though the book won a Newbery Medal in 1963, it was originally near unpublishable. L'engle had to go to several different publishers before she was able to get the book published. This was due to difficulties in marketing. The book was hard to market because it contained so many elements of both science fiction and fantasy. As far as science fiction goes, the main topic that's dealt with is time travel through the use of a tesseract. The tesseract is explained by using the simile of an ant on a thread. If a thread is held like this is the space-time continuum, and then an ant is on this hand over here. Now what the tesseract does is pulls the ends of the thread closer together, the ant walks to this hand right here, and then the space-time continuum snaps back into place. Fantasy elements are found in L'engle's characters. Some of the creatures that the characters open themselves up to when time travel goes wrong could be construed as fantasy-like. Additionally, L'engle also plays with some age-old fantasy tropes. Fantasy has a trope called the Three Brothers, which can be found in books like Tuck Everlasting and the Harry Potter series. L'engle does something interesting with this trope, which is she mixes the concept of a witch or an elderly magic woman with the Three Brothers trope, and she has three witches. Of a sort, anyway. I'm just calling them that because they're a bit magic. And their names are Mrs. Whatsit, Mrs. Who, and Mrs. Witch. And they all have very distinct personalities. Mrs. Whatsit wears, I think 70 coats and 3 different skirts and 12 socks underneath her boots. And that's kind of her demeanor when the characters first meet her. Mrs. Who wears big spectacles and only speaks in poetry. And they're just kind of these interesting characters who come into contact with the main characters and guide them on their adventure. Although L'engle dealt with some concepts in science fiction and fantasy that were already existing at the time, she still was very much the first of her kind with this novel. Especially not just because elements of science fiction and fantasy were both present, but because they were both present, but they were also intermingling, which is what makes A Wrinkle in Time such a classic in the science fiction and fantasy community. A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'engle. Published 1962. Science fiction fantasy. 10 out of 10.